Hello and welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about the OA Part 1, Episode 8, which is the part finale? The season finale. But it's in parts, so the part finale.
We apologize for getting this late to you. We have had some personal items that we were working on this weekend, some health issues. And, obviously we're finishing off our series on the OA, going through episode by episode. What should we do next? What would you all like to hear us go over episode by episode next? We'll give you guys a few weeks to kind of get back to us on that since we have a lot to talk about in the meantime. So just let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. We would prefer a TV show that we actually have a subscription to. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime are like our go-tos.
Even if it's something that we've already talked about, that's perfectly okay to do. Like, for instance, The Good Place. If you want us to go through episode by episode of The Good Place.
That'd be a lot of episodes.
That would be a lot of episodes. Well, like season 1, for instance. That's only, 12 episodes, but there's a lot in each episode.
Yeah.
So, anyway, just let us know. We'll let you know how to get a hold of us at the end of the episode. And, let's jump into it. So, we have our summary and review now. Summary. Shoot, this is something I really didn't think about.
Do you need a minute?
No, the OA finishes her story and is discovered by the parents and all of the parents, including her own parents. And they do not take kindly to them meeting in an abandoned house. Prairie is placed on house arrest. And the kids stop a school shooter.
Okay. I'll fill in the blanks. There's not too many. The kids start doubting Prairie's story because FBI man, who for some reason was in her house, for no reason that we can actually find, gives the kids a box of books that supposedly Prairie had read. And it was like books about angels and that kind of stuff. So in their mind, they started to doubt her story because there's evidence that she just read these books and put herself into the situation.
A little bit of this is retconned in season 2, so we're not going to talk about that. But
I honestly thought that this scene specifically was way earlier in the season. I totally forgot that it was in the season finale.
It's in the season finale, and what in the world is the FBI guy doing at the house?
Yeah, with no one there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it may have been just to check on them because of all the reporters and everything else.
I don't know. Why would he enter into the house with nobody there?
It also plays into another theory, which I'll talk about here in just a second. Let me get to the review first, and then I'll...
Sounds like a plan.
I actually really enjoyed this episode. This is the one that solidified for me the OA. And the
very last episode.
The very last... Well, it's the one that kind of wrapped it all up. That kind of, like, tied up the loose ends and gave you some more questions to enter into another season, which is... You know, the fact that it's aired in 2016 and we didn't get a new season until 2018 was like, seriously?
No, it was 2019. It was this year.
Was it this year?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess it was earlier this year. Oh, yeah, it was. It was March, wasn't it?
Yep.
No, April. It wasn't until April, so it was 2.5 years almost.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness. 2.5 years. Like, you had these questions for 2.5 years. And I think this is what kind of set the fan base into that whole, we're going to question everything. Mm-hmm. We're going to make up our own theories, and I'll talk about some of those theories in just a second. I'll let you do your review before we talk about theories. Before I go into my part of the, let's talk about the themes. Because there's, like, I looked up a lot before coming to this episode. So.
I know you did. I was there for some of it.
Yeah, your
That's
review?
it? You're done? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, I agree that this episode, I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, I actually do like this series, and I'm kind of picking up on what's happening. And then it was over. And then I was like, oh, okay, I guess I will just wait. But I was disappointed. Like at the very end, I really wanted more. Like I didn't feel like the story was finished, and the creators have made it very clear that the story is not finished, that there's a few more parts left to the story. So I'm happy to continue to watch it, to figure out what's going on with the OA and why is she the original angel and what is her purpose, and will her and Homer ever get to like touch again? Who knows?
Well, and like I said, a lot of this is kind of retcon in season 2, but I think Britt Marling and Zal Batmanage, I just get focused on the Batman and forget about the rest of it.
It's okay.
They do such a great job of ending a season of a television show, is giving you enough questions about what else is going on that you begin to question everything else that you already saw, so that you maybe want to go back and rewatch everything. Mm-hmm. But also they tie up a lot of the loose ends to kind of say, okay, this story is over. We're going to move on to a different story for the lives of these characters.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that here in just a second. But one of the biggest themes of this was that Prairie's whole story was a lie.
Yes.
And, a lot of people had different theories about that, about why, like, for instance, the FBI agent was there, that the FBI agent was there because the media had, kind of blown this out of proportion. This missing woman all of a sudden shows up and is, like, creating a cult.
Yeah.
And this does come into play a little bit in season 2, which I loved. I love that they pulled this theory into season 2 and made this more of the media thing. And so this kind of played into some of the theories. One of the bigger theories was that this is all just a gigantic satire of consumerism in the United States, which I think it does fit into that a little bit, but I don't think that this is really the major theme series, and particularly this episode.
And obviously another big major theme in the OA is what happens after death.
Yeah.
Because that's the big thing that Hap is trying to figure out. He's trying to figure out what, his dead wife? Is that who he's trying to... No, he's just trying to forge new scientific ground for medical resources. Oh, yeah, because when he was a doctor in the emergency room, that's when he first experienced death, and that's got it. I remember now. Yeah, but that is a big major... who really knows what happens after death?
Exactly.
And maybe we do end up going into a different... Dimension, yeah.
And we did talk about this a little bit more in our episode on season 2, or on part 2, sorry.
I know it's very hard to keep that straight, but go ahead.
And so there's a lot of this. There's even a theory that Hap sent the gunman to the school because he saw the footage of Prairie on the news with the kids. And so he wanted to kill the other people who knew the story of what happened.
Huh.
Which I can see that, but I also felt like they didn't show the gunman at all because of that, because they didn't want to give any attention to that.
Yeah, it wasn't really about the gunman.
No, it wasn't about the gunman. I think this entire episode plays upon one of the big themes that we see played out in several different movies, in Big Fish, in Secondhand Lions, in the book The Life of Pi. Not so much the movie. I think the movie was just pretty. It didn't really pull a lot of the theme into the movie, the narrative theme.
I don't know that story at all, so I'm just going to look at you and just smile and agree.
Okay. But I really feel that this is shown to show the true character of not just the OA, but also of all of the characters that she interacts with. And one of the great quotes that I learned from Robert McKee while reading his book, Story, is true character is revealed in the choices a human being makes under pressure. The greater the pressure, the deeper the revelation. The truer the choice to the character's essential nature. And like I said, this comes from the chapter on characters in Robert McKee's book on storytelling, on script writing for screen, which, I think this is very much true to that theme. Is that the theme is the story doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happened in the story. It doesn't matter if Prairie is telling lies. It doesn't matter if her story is true. What matters is, did the story change you? Mm-hmm. And for each of these characters, it shows a deep and abiding change because that pressure was so high at the very end. You saw a difference in character in BB-8, especially when she turns back. She goes towards the gunman, towards the sounds of gunfire, rather than away with the principal. Mm-hmm. The principal is trying to pull her away, and at the very beginning of the series, you would see that BB-8 would have just stayed in the classroom, would have gone away with the principal.
Yep.
That she was changed by the story. Mm-hmm. And I think that each and every single one of these characters, especially when Steve stands up, when he starts it and he's getting the rest of them up.
Well, they pretty much all jump at the same time. But he's looking at them.
Yeah, he makes eye contact with all of them beforehand. Yes. that I think what solidifies him kind of as that leader of the group is that he makes that eye contact. And in that moment, in that eye contact, he's saying, we're going to do the dance. We're going to do the movements. Mm-hmm. And that is,
or at least we got to do something, and this is something that we can do.
Yeah, and that's a change of his character too. Mm-hmm. Like,
because he would have run for the hills.
Exactly, he was changed by the story. That each of these characters was changed by the story, and you could see that it was true change because of the immense pressure each of them were under. Now, this is something that is played with a little bit more at the very end of season 2. Prairie, Nina, the OA. Mm-hmm. Talks about that, how human beings become angels is because under pressure, like a diamond, that carbon is under pressure and therefore creates the stone, which is just beautiful, and that she was put under so much pressure by Hap that she became this. And that's one of the reasons why I liked season 2, is that I got rid of more of the whole heady aspect, the ethereal aspect of things. Anyway, bringing it back to this, I think this is my whole idea of this, is that the story doesn't matter. And this was the theme that I think was pulled throughout the entire season 1, which pulled in very end there, and that's what made this the solid episode, which clinched the entire season for me, was because it said this. It said it doesn't matter, that if you were changed by the story, that's what matters. And I think this is very true about religions, about like Bible stories, and the narrative structure as a whole. I mean, this is why we do the podcast, mm-hmm. is that we're changed by each of the worlds that we enter. And we enter these worlds through story, through somebody telling us a story, by watching a story,
by reading a story,
listening, watching.
I'm just going to name all the senses. Smelling.
Smelling a story. Well, yeah, I guess you could. I do know there are some olfactory artists that try to evoke different emotions, and they're mostly employed by like Yankee Candle Company, but not a sponsor. But have you had one of these experiences that is really a character defining moment in your life, or just something that you felt like you were so under pressure that your true self finally came out? Tell me about it.
I feel like I'm under pressure a lot, so I haven't actually been given a time to reflect on whether or not my true character, I guess, is out, or I guess I've always just felt like my true character has always been out there. So I don't know. I feel like I can't give you a good, satisfying answer to that for myself.
Well, what do you mean by under pressure? How do you feel under pressure?
Oh, well, like job, life, basic people stuff. Like I haven't gone through anything too dramatic to like warrant anything more under pressure than I think the normal everyday person would experience as well.
Okay, I really don't feel like you're giving yourself enough credit. I mean, you have gone through some pretty serious stuff. I mean, just in this past year alone, we've gone through just a ton of stuff.
But I don't think that I'm done yet because I'm still under that pressure. Like, I'm just now.
Oh yeah, nobody is done, and that's why there's a season 2. That's why there's a part 2, is because nobody's story is over. We just get to see glimpses of the story. That's what a movie is. That's what a television series is. It's just glimpses of the story.
You?
For me, it really depends on which glimpse that you want to talk about. But I would say that for me, ultimately, the most defining would have to be with my PTSD, with my generalized anxiety disorder, especially losing my last career, losing my last ministry position. That it was a refining process that took well over 2 years to really get to a point, and even then, it took some other events that were around it, the context of it, to really refine me and really help me figure out who I was, help me to figure out that I was more than just a minister, that I was more than just a youth minister, that I was Miguel. And that was okay. That it wasn't perfect, but it was okay. And honestly, I think that, I'm not done, obviously, but I'm going to, use what I learned from that and moving forward and try to be the best Miguel that I can be, even though it's not going to be perfect. And that's okay.
All right. So, talking about things not being perfect, we can definitely say that Prairie's or the OA's experience has not been the ideal circumstance for somebody in any circumstance, anybody on earth. And it kind of brought my attention to the fact that sometimes it's hard to leave the bad situations that we're in. Mm-hmm. Like, we will really fight to keep ourselves into that situation because we're comfortable with it. It's what we are familiar with. It's what we think is normal. And that definitely, I think, kind of comes across with the OA because she knows her situation when she's kidnapped with Hap. She knows it's a bad situation.
Yeah.
They're actively fighting to get out. But then when Hap takes her and leaves her on the side of the road, she's devastated. She's so upset. She can't believe that he did this to her. She's at this point in time, she's more upset with the fact that he left her on the side of the road, away from Homer, away from her friends, away from what she was trying to build. And she has no idea where she's at. She has no idea what they're at. She can't return to them. So she's very devastated because all of her hard work that she's put into trying to figure out the 5 movements basically is just gone. Or she wants to be a part of it now. And yes, Homer can bring it to the other people, but that was her project. Like, it would be like if somebody if you worked really hard at something at work and then somebody else just swooped in and took it from you last minute and just put the final touches on it. Like, whose project really is it? It's yours because you worked on it the longest. Anyway.
Well, yeah, and there's difference of vision and all that other stuff to bring into that scenario. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I think this is applicable also to people in abusive relationships.
Yeah, for sure.
That it's hard to leave toxic relationships because you feel like you owe the other person, you owe society or whatever to stay together or to make it appear like everything is okay.
Well, not only that, I mean, that is part of it, but when people realize that they're in a bad situation, what happens is that they do consider the social aspects of it, but there's bigger parts to it that keep them there.
Yeah.
Mainly finances, homelessness, if they have children involved, just general safety. A lot of women in abusive relationships are afraid to leave because they are afraid if they leave that their abuser is going to hunt them down and kill them because they left. So in their mind, it's safer for them to stay in that relationship than it is for them to leave.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which, well, and always kind of similar. I mean, if she had left on her own, Hap would have hunted them down and killed them if he wasn't able to catch them.
Well, we should also define it that it's not just women who are in abusive relationships like that.
Oh, no, that's a good point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. You and I have been in many a bad situation throughout our life, both together and before we met each other. So it doesn't have to be like super in detail, but can you tell me about a time that you found it difficult to leave a bad situation?
Well, to go back to my example I just used, to leave ministry, it was extremely difficult for me to leave that. Yet it was an extremely toxic relationship. It was a very abusive relationship, mainly me being the abused.
And it wasn't just like one person, like one abuser.
Yeah.
It was like general.
Yes.
I guess, you know what I mean? I'm trying to like not point fingers because it wasn't just one person.
It wasn't just one person. It was a series of churches, and that's, it was a serial victim, abusee.
Which is a thing, actually.
Yeah.
Once you are a victim of abuse, unfortunately, people who are victims of abuse in the past have a higher chance of becoming a victim in the future. So that makes sense.
Well, and it's primarily because that's where you feel most comfortable. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't feel like yourself unless you're going through some of these issues, and
you tell yourself it's normal.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it took so long for me to kind of transition out of that. Was like I didn't know how to be okay, and I'm just okay. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think that to define it a little bit more, there was a lot of spiritual, a lot of emotional abuse that happened in these churches. Mm-hmm. I was taken advantage of to the point where, I didn't know how to say no anymore. I didn't know how to define boundaries for my personal life. I didn't know how to define boundaries for myself as a human being. And it wasn't just a church. We had a friend named Christy who was a very good friend. She died a few years ago, and she told me once when I was looking for another position, and it was just funny because this was right before I found the only healthy church I ever worked at. Mm-hmm. She told me, "You're attracted to unhealthy churches. That these unhealthy churches are going to continue to abuse you, and you're attracted to that because you find it's okay." And that's stuck with me since then. I mean, I think what solidified her as, one of my best friends was because she was able to tell the truth when, it's a hard truth.
Mm-hmm. It is a hard truth. For me, I'm going to go back in time, like further back in time, just to try to mix it up a little bit. So I'm not saying the same thing over again with my experiences. But I would say the first time when I realized I was in a bad situation and that I needed to leave, but I couldn't figure out how to leave, was when I was in college. My very first year, I was still living with my parents, and that was the last year that they were married. It was very rough. Like, my parents, as many people who have been, gone through divorce, my parents should have been divorced way long before they actually decided to finalize the divorce. They were one of those people that wanted to wait until their kids were older, which your kids are in, I'm going to be on a little bit of a soapbox right now. Your kids are in a very, they're growing. You're trying to develop them as a person. And if you keep them in a situation where there's a lot of fighting and arguing and it's very unhealthy, you're going to rub off some of that unhealthiness to your kids.
Well, and teenagers are just natural BS meters. Like they know when they're being lied to.
Yep.
They know when something is going well because they do it all the time.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And so, luckily, at this point in time, my parents had decided, okay, we are going to get a divorce. You have to decide where you're going to go. Are you going to live with me, as in like, that's my mom talking. Are you going to live with your mom or are you going to live with your dad? And I decided neither. I decided that even though I wanted to be there to support my mom, that it was best not to stay with my mom because of a few other reasons. And the best choice for me was actually to go live with my older sister. But it was hard because, you know, my little sister felt like I was abandoning her when I went to go move with our older sister. And it wasn't that I was abandoning her. It was I needed to heal myself. Yeah. And I couldn't continue to be in a household where either my mom or dad lived because it would like stifle my healing. So,
well, then that's a very good point. Is that we need to remove ourselves from toxic situations in order to heal, and that in itself is a very difficult thing to do. That's part of that whole thing. Is that you've become accustomed to toxicity, and you need to detox, as it were.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm really glad that I left when I did. And I'm one of those people that I learn from other people's mistakes. So, luckily my parents' mistakes didn't as easily rub off onto me because, you know, like I said, I learned from other people's mistakes and can see what worked and what didn't from other people's actions.
Well, I also have to applaud Abel for avoiding a toxic situation when he got upset by the fact that Nancy had, you know what, there is Nancy in
okay, we're not going
to the OA and Nancy in Stranger
Michael
Things.
Thing. No, the Steve thing. We already have the Steve thing. We're not going to add this Nancy thing.
Nancy and Steve. Anyway, when he just goes downstairs, he makes his waffle. You know, he's just like, I'm just going to need some time to think about it. Like, I was hurt by this, and he's removing himself from the toxic situation in order to think about it, in order to process it for himself, in order to heal in a way, because he knows that Nancy had her reasons, and you know he knows that he's not going to like those reasons, so he's going to try to remove himself from the situation until he feels healed enough to actually confront those reasons.
And that is actually a good tidbit from our therapist. If you are sometimes you just got to remove yourself from not even like a toxic situation, but just a hard situation or one that's overly emotional. Sometimes you just need to take 5 minutes, regroup, come in with a clear head. And I think that's what he was trying to do. And then Nancy just kept following him. So.
Yeah. Well, she wanted to complete the conversation, and he was just, you know.
Sometimes it's better just to give yourself a few minutes and then complete the conversation.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, our saints of the episode. I'm going to go with Saint Steve because I wrote a whole article about
I was
Steve's.
about to say because you are kind of having a boy crush on him?
No. Because they're Steve's.
Because they're Steve's.
Because it's Netflix, and every single one of these series has a Steve. But I think primarily because of what he overcame. And I think that's a miracle in and of itself, is that he overcame this, just his own personal abuse of himself. Like, he has this abusive relationship with his father, but also he abused himself. And he did that by...
You could definitely argue that drug use. Yep.
And his complete cavalier nature about his own well-being. That, you know, he just didn't care about anybody else because he couldn't care about himself.
Yep.
And I think that over the course of the series, that it showed the story changed him in a way that he was able to care about the other characters. And you see him still struggle with this in season 2, but I think this is something that, in and of itself, it's a miracle that he changed.
Yeah, for sure. Especially where he was at the beginning. Like, he almost did a 180.
Yeah.
He's done a 160.
He's not going to go throat punch anybody now.
No, he's not going to throat punch anybody now.
The other miracle that I will attribute to Steve is to being able to telepathically communicate with the other 5.
Yes.
And get them to do something courageous, which was the movements in front of the gunman. Mm-hmm. So those are the 2 miracles. He is Saint Steve's of the OA.
Just one Saint Steve.
Yes.
Just the Saint Steve of the OA.
Well, I'm grouping in with the other Saint.
But they weren't part of the OA.
I know, but they're the patron saints of Netflix. So
okay. So I'm going to do an easy one, and I'm going to choose the OA, which, in my opinion, is kind of cheating because she is the original angel. But I'm going to do it anyway because you did not choose her. Okay. So one of the miracles that she did was that even though she knew that her story was going to be batshit crazy and that she was going to have a hard time trying to get people to believe her, she still told her story. Mm-hmm. And that is something that's very admirable, especially in today's atmosphere with the Me Too movement, for example. Mm-hmm. And so I applaud her for that. I also applaud her for finding the right people to tell the story to, because I think that's also important. A lot of people, when they have an important story that they need to tell somebody, even if it sounds really out there, if they tell the wrong person, sometimes it's going to fall flat, it's not going to go anywhere, or they're just going to flat out deny them.
Yeah. Audience selection is a big thing.
Yep, and she was able to select her audience, and a great audience who was able to kind of save her soul, I guess.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Well, you see her in the last scene.
Yeah.
That's not really spoiling, right?
Well, and it's been out for over 2 years, so, if you haven't watched it by now, we've already invited you to watch it, so.
Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, now as we wrap this up, I just want to remind you that we're wanting you guys to let us know what next series we should do. We should do an episode-by-episode walkthrough of. We're happy to do pretty much everything, and please keep it to things that we have access to.
Yes.
So if you haven't seen something in a while and you're not sure if it's still available on that platform, please go check before suggesting it.
I would have to say, if you could please limit it to just one season of whatever show, and if you could please make the season less than 12 episodes. That's my requirement. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, there are some things that, the 24 episode arc is just bad.
Yeah, no thank you. I'm going to veto those.
Yeah, there are some How I Met Your Mother episodes that I'm like this one and the last one were just bad. Like, they didn't carry the season very well. And, you know how it goes. So I like the shorter season arcs.
Yes, shorter seasons. That's my bid. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Those are my requirements.
Well, let them know how they can get a hold of us.
Yes, so you can give us your suggestions on our Facebook at the Patron Saints of Pop Culture Podcast. You can also find us on Instagram at the same place, the Patron Saints of Pop Culture Podcast.
Podcast is not in there. It's just Patron Saints of Pop Culture.
Just Patron Saints of Pop Culture. Sorry. And then also, too, you can always go to our website, which is www.thepatronsaintsofpopculture.org.
You got it mostly right.
Oh, darn.
There is no "the" in there, so it's just www.patronsaintsofpopculture.org.
Okay. All right, let's say that one more time so they know which one is the right one.
www.patronsaintsofpopculture.org.
Could you, see me thinking, is this the right?
Yes.
I was so focused on making sure I got the www part in because that is important.
We do still have an email address, which I check whenever it tells me that I have an email there, which most of the time it's just spam email, at honestfaithconvos@gmail.com. I'm going to open a new Patron Saints of Pop Culture one here soon, but yeah, probably just convos@patronsaintsofpopculture.org might work better.
Yeah.
So we'll see about opening up that email address.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go and let us know what you want us to talk about. Next week, we are going to push everything aside. And I know that we promised that we were going to get to Good Omens. We'll do that in 2 weeks, I promise. But we just watched Us this week. And, like, I honestly, there's so much that I thought about for that. And there was so many layers. I loved it. And I want to talk about it. So
Yes.
we're going to talk about it next week.
Sometimes things just fall into our lap that are a little bit more important. And Us is one of them.
That was like the OA. We were going to talk about something else, and I can't remember what it was. And we started watching the OA, and we're like, nope, we're going to talk about this. So, like the series that we just finished, we're going to be pushing things aside to talk about Us. Jordan Peele's second movie, which a lot of people didn't understand, but we have a lot. There was a lot there.
There is a lot, yeah.
Which makes it a little complicated, but I think that once you pull aside one of the layers, it starts to make sense.
Well, and I was gonna say the fun part about the movie, which is not it's not really like a fun movie, but there's so much to it to where you can pick a theme and just run wild with it, and there's so much. It doesn't matter. You can pick anything and just grab a hold of it and run amok, and it would still work.
And that's one of the great things about some stories, well-crafted stories. People can pull what they want from it.
Or what they need from it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, well-crafted stories are beneficial to humanity. Like
Thank you, Miguel.
Us. So, with all that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.